Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I realized I've been doing a lot of tutorials and I haven't been sharing any stories of my life as a developer, and I guess that's really interesting for a lot of people because you get to relate and resonate through the experiences of others. And I'm going to talk about a time of when I remember sitting at my chair in the middle of my entire team and seeing the eyes of the director coming towards us, and me realizing exactly at a certain point of him staring at me that I had made a mistake. Okay, so to give some context, this was around April of 2014, and this was my very first co-op or internship. And it was at a university, very well known, very well recognized, and at the time it was a web design co-op or internship. And I was just transitioning from my IT education or career, and I stuck with it, but I really wanted to do a web design or web development internship because I wanted to learn how to code more. So I remember, what we did was we essentially created lab sites or laboratory websites for these labs, and it allowed them to showcase what they're working on, write blogs and all sorts of things. And if you're not familiar with how agencies or these design firms kind of work, they generally have a content management system that allows them to manage all their sites, and also that there's like a front-facing content management system that allows these admins or these users to update their site as well. So I'll say this job, I spent a lot of time doing design, doing mock-ups, and then converting these designs into HTML, CSS, and whatnot. And it was all PHP based. It was a very simplified content management system called ModX. So it's even easier than WordPress. And I was kind of bored of just doing HTML and CSS and just designing. I wanted to code a little bit more complex things or do a little bit more scripting. And I would spend a lot of these days after work or these internships or after my internship learning how to code JavaScript and learning how to code PHP. Would just go to Barnes & Noble, grab a book, and just sit down and go through the chapters and learn. So I was getting more and more confident as I was learning more about CSS and HTML, but also learning a little bit more about PHP and JavaScript because that's all I was working on throughout my summer or my co-op. And 3 months into my co-op, I thought, you know what? Let me try to utilize some of these really cool features that the CMS has, and one of them were plugins. And plugins were essentially PHP plugins that you could do to save yourself a little bit of time, and they would work by just having your own directive tags, which is simply like your own HTML tag that you can put parameters in. And I don't remember exactly what I was working on, but I remember, yes, I'm going to do this, and this is going to change how everything worked or whatever. And I was really confident. And it was downhill from there. So what happened? Well, I remember testing out this script that I also don't remember. I think it injected HTML or image backgrounds without having to do HTML and CSS. And it was really easy. You would just like put a path to your image file and it would have your full size image. And it was a really simple thing to do. And that was a constant pattern throughout all of our sites and our projects. And I worked and fine-tuned this script over and over again. Even though it was probably like 50 lines of code, I kept retweaking it from Stack Overflow, from all the ModX community sites. And I was like, oh my God, this has to be perfect, blah, blah, blah. And I remember the first iteration going through the site that I was assigned to work on, and it worked flawlessly. And I continued to tinker with the script, and even though it was like just adding more and more features. And at that point I was like, oh my God, I'm ready to make this available for the whole team, and this is going to be a good way to build more credibility or be recognized on my team. So I remember talking to my boss, and my boss at the time, she managed all of the designers, and she's like, okay, if you want to make this plugin available, I'll talk to the director of engineering. We can get you the credentials to go to the admin portal and upload your plugin and make it available to all of us. So I remember this being, I think, on a Tuesday at like 11 o'clock. And I kept tinkering my script, and I kept tinkering it, and I was like, okay, this is perfect. I wanted to upload it once and be done with it. So I go ahead, and I remember going to this upload plugin section. I hit submit, and I remember seeing the green bar. The green bar was moving up top or something, some kind of bar, and I remember getting stuck. And I was freaking out because I was like, okay, maybe like this shouldn't make any sense. My plugin is like 30 kilobytes, really short plugin. there should be no reason why it's getting stuck. So I sat there, I was like, okay, what do you do when you get stuck? Well, obviously you take a break. I mean, like when you're stuck and something's not working, just walk around for 5 minutes. So I walked around the lab, like the hallways, really dismal hallways, and I came back and I saw that it was still stuck. So I hit the refresh button. Nothing was working. So there I was, kind of confused, thinking to myself, well, I know my script worked. I mean, I tested it on my first site and there wasn't any issues. So it can't be me, maybe it's maintenance. So then I went ahead and went back to my site that I was managing, the lab site that I was working on, and I hit the refresh button to go to the admin portal and it was not working. So I was like, okay, this might not be an isolated case. This is probably more than just me. So I remember sliding over to my colleague's desk and I said, hey, is your site working? And obviously you're like working your text editor, so sometimes you go back and forth, but you might be like working your editor for quite some time before you go back to the admin portal. So she's like, yeah, it should be fine. And I'm like, well, just hit refresh and tell me what happens. She hits refresh, nothing, 404. And I think at that point I realized that there's a high chance that this was my fault, but still being young and naive, I kind of thought, okay, it's highly maybe likely that there could be maintenance going on at the time and we just weren't aware of it. So there it was. We were just talking to each other, and then I remember asking her, like, maybe it's not just us, let's go ask everyone else. So we walked over we worked at a very small area, so we walked over to my other colleagues and I asked them, hey, could you hit that refresh button and tell me if your site's working? At that time, that's when I realized that, yeah, this is definitely an issue. So we did our typical kumbaya circle when something is wrong. So we essentially sit in a circle in our office chairs, and we're just talking to each other, trying to figure out maybe someone did this, maybe someone did that, and what should we do next? So obviously, as a designer, you don't want to cause too much issues with other people. So you're like, okay, worst case, let's go ahead and contact the director of engineering, see if he can help us. So I remember we pinged him on, I forgot, we were using Slack or something at the time, and I remember the sites were coming back up slowly over time, and we were like getting excited, and we're just sitting there in a circle. Okay, like it's coming back up, like it's good, we're good. And I just remember being at the very middle of the circle, looking through the hallway, because what happened was we designers used to work in the left adjacent part of the office, and then all the back-end developers and whatnot, the infrastructure people, worked on the right side. And there was a doorway in between us, and in that doorway you could see the developers, and it pointed right to the director's office. So obviously I was sitting at that middle part of the circle. I could see the director of engineering coming towards us, and in particular him shaking his head like someone F something up. Obviously that person was me. So he comes up to us, and he is this really tall, lengthy dude, and he was towering over us, and he's a very sarcastic guy with a very low voice. And I remember him telling me and all of us sitting there, all right, who broke this? Who made my life worse than it has to be, or something stupid like that. And I literally remember just staring at him and saying, that would be me. Yeah. So apparently my script that I was tinkering with that worked the first time, because of me tinkering with it so much, I ended up creating a script that had just an unclosed PHP tag, and that's why the script didn't work. And because of that, it crashed everything. Now, maybe there could be other reasons why, and maybe he was just pulling my chain, but at that moment, I kind of realized, as an intern or someone who's just getting started, you still have the power to destroy everything, because they give you the power to do that. But on the flip side, you do have people that care about your growth, and they understand that this is a big part of learning. And what he told me, exactly what I remember, was, don't do that again. So that really stuck with me till this day. because I mean, I still break things all the time, but I learned to be a little bit more particular and more careful about checking my code before I upload it or before I do a commit push. And I learned to just don't be afraid to also take risks, because that's also part of the learning process. And to encourage younger developers or junior developers who are still on that journey, who need to learn to break things, because that is part of the process. That's why we're developers. That's why we use Stack Overflow. So with that being said, if you are a new intern that is starting your new job, don't be afraid to break things. Double check your code many, many times. And if you do break things, that's okay. So I hope you guys enjoyed that story. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you want to hear more stories like that, like one time I helped lose a couple $100,000 for our business. Another time I nearly strangled someone at a hackathon because I was so frustrated. And other times where I became best friends with some of the hackathon people that I worked with. There are just so many different stories, but if you want to hear any of these stories, please tell me in the comment section below. And I'm looking forward to all the feedback that you guys give me. Thank you so much, and enjoy.